as well. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started. First item on our agenda today is approval of the minutes from October 25th. Ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Move approval.
Moved by Her Worship, seconded by Councillor Ogden. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion's carried. Ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Mayor Reardon, seconded by Councillor Stewart. On the question, all those in favor? Thank you. Motion's carried. Next, disclosures of conflict of interest, if there are any. Great, seeing none. Moving on to the consent agenda, item 5.1 is included in there. It's the St. John Police Commission ABC reporting template. Any questions, committee?
I'll move 5.1.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ask for a seconder on that one. Councillor Stewart, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Great, motion's carried. Thank you very much. No service review safety assessments today. On to section 7, 7.1 St. John Police Foot Patrols. I'll turn that over to I believe, Sean. Welcome, Sean Rocca. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Hickey. Beginning in 2022, the St. John Police Command Team and Community Engagement Team began proactively conducting foot patrols in our priority neighborhoods. The purpose was to enhance community engagement, to prevent and deter crime, and to develop a more in-depth understanding of the concerns facing these various communities in order to collectively engage in problem solving. The St. John Police Foot Patrols are conducted during the spring, summer, and fall months. Last year in 2022, a total of 46 foot patrols were conducted. This year, 2023, we've conducted a total of 42 foot patrols, 22 of which were focused in the Uptown and Waterloo Village neighborhoods due to increased concerns raised about problematic activities in those areas. And the remainder of the foot patrols were conducted in the other locations throughout the city.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rocca. Any questions from the committee?
Hi, Sean. Councillor Ogden calling.
Sure. Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, Barry.
Okay. The last number of years, quite a few years, marigolds and murals have cleaned up all the utility poles in the city. There's actually a bylaw that you're not allowed to post anything on them, and we took all the rust off the guardrails, pretty well all of them, and we cleaned up all the graffiti in the city. And just a couple weeks ago, it started to appear. We got a lot of it down. The whole front, the big part of the front of the LBR was really covered badly. We got that down, and you can actually take it down if you've got 1+ degrees. People are going to wait until the spring, but we've since found the same tags. One's called Spark, and the other one's called CIS or something, in a number of places in the south end and north end, and we've got most of them down. A couple are really up high on you need ladders and that. And anyway, I mentioned it to Constable Phil Marr, and he's mentioned it to others. But if we could catch, and he's caught a couple already last year. But if we could just keep an eye on those, it was a huge effort to clean all the utility poles and to get all the graffiti down. It took us a number of years. So if you could just keep an eye on that, it's I've seen it in several cities all over the world, and have studied it a bit about graffiti and tagging, and you know, the whole broken window thing that started in New York and Paris. But once it starts, it doesn't stop. And like the old General Hospital, once some graffiti appeared on it, and then some broken windows, and then people gave up on it. And the general engineering-wise, the centerpiece was in great shape. It greatly distorted or just hurt the skyline of St. John, and it's an embarrassment that it was torn down, but it just started with some graffiti artists, and nobody did anything, and everybody sat by. So it's one way to lower crime. In New York, the crime went up so high and just snowballed that the city began to lose population, and the economy crashed in the cities in the 70s, and so it can lead to many other things. So if you could just keep an eye on that, I certainly appreciate it. And I know your foot patrols wouldn't want to be going out at night, but down at Robertson Square on Bridge Street, if we just had a drive through there late at night, each night, it would help us, because sometimes things happen down there. It's not well lit or anything. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the graffiti really does create many, many more problems that for years is just was not dealt with in the city at all, and we've got it under control.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
And I appreciate the bringing that to my attention, Councillor Ogden. One thing I would say that it is helpful if you do see the graffiti and before it's cleaned up, that it is reported in each and every instance, and that can be done online as well in our online reporting. Even if we don't have an investigative leads, it's good that we're tracking if it's the same tags or the same type of graffiti. We can track the intelligence, and it eventually may lead to identifying a suspect. So it is important, and I always tell folks, please report the graffiti before you clean it up. It may seem minor, but if it's the same tag appearing in many different locations, it can help us in identifying the suspect if it's reported, especially if there's any video surveillance in the area. So
thank you. It did happen. The LBR did report it, and I took a few pictures before I took them down. And it is two individuals. One's tag is Spark, the other one is CAS or something like that. And it's really, really proliferated just in one weekend. And it can destroy the image of a city so quickly. And New York City and Paris showed that once it started.
Councillor Ogden, I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to make sure Councillor Stewart gets a chance to ask his question. So.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Just keeping an eye on the time here. Over to Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chairperson Hickey. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
We can.
Okay, so yeah, I've always been a fan of foot patrols. I think it's great visibility for the community. But if you don't mind, Chairperson, I'd like to put you on the spot for a moment, because that's your front yard, literally. And I'd heard, I guess you and I had a conversation quite a while back, that you didn't maybe necessarily feel they were working at that time. Have you noticed an improvement?
To be honest with you, Councillor Stewart, no, I haven't. I'd suggest, I'd suggest 46 times out doesn't really build a massive amount of confidence. There's also a question, and certainly it's a question that I had planned to ask to Sergeant Rocca, just around what the intention is with the foot patrols, and really what the aim and intended outcome is for them as well. So I think that's important. I've certainly not seen anything in the neighborhood change as a result of them. That's not to say they haven't had an impact. So I guess maybe I take your question and turn it over to Sergeant Rocca, just maybe to highlight some of the intention around it, but also what they feel the outcome has been from them, if you don't mind.
That would be part two of my question, is to hear what our intentions are, because I do drive by there regularly, and I'm still seeing a lot of things that I'd hoped we wouldn't be seeing with more foot patrols. But I'll turn that over to Sergeant Rocca.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Stewart and Chairperson Hickey. And I would say the intention of the foot patrols is not, for instance, to increase a quantitative number of arrests or charges, so to speak. And it can be difficult to measure because it is part of what we're trying to achieve is not a quantitative value, it's more of a qualitative initiative in terms of actually engaging with the community, listening to people's concerns, and understanding the issues that are happening in the community. The focus is not primarily to conduct foot patrols to arrest people or charge people with various offenses. And so I can appreciate your comments that you may not see a significant difference down there, and I can't say that because of foot patrols that the number of charges would lead to a difference in what's happening in that area. That's, again, not the intent of it. It's really about connecting with the community, about having conversations about the problems, and in some circumstances trying to develop solutions with the stakeholders in that area about how we can improve the situation. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, for the most part, it does, Sean. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Reardon.
What I will say, Sergeant Rock, is that I think going south with the school, that they really appreciate the foot patrols because it gives that the opportunity there, especially to the kids, to meet police on another level. So the feedback that I would get from there is that it is helpful and it is something that they can engage with the students with. So, and just with the community, surrounding community. So listen, I love foot patrols. I think they're great. I want to support them in any way I can support you providing them. I'm there. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
And I guess what I would just say in wrapping up, I think, Sean, you made a really important distinction there, Sergeant Rocca, in saying that, you know, it can't be about going into a community and expecting more arrests and more outcomes, because then all we're doing is criminalizing a traditionally homeless population or more at-risk population unfairly. And that is not going to yield good outcomes for our community. So I think what I'm looking forward to in the future is seeing the evidence and the outcomes that support the idea that foot patrols are a good strategic decision. If it's an effort, you know, and if it's an effort to build community relationships with police and not criminalize the population, I think that can have some important value. But if it is, then I think we need to look at a solution. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Sergeant Rocca? Great. Well, thank you very much. I'll ask for a receive and file on the report.
Move, receive, and file.
Moved by Her Worship, seconded by Councillor Stewart. On the question, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 7.2, our alert ready system. Going to turn that over to staff. Oh, I think we've got Les Weber here. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Les. But I do want to welcome you here.
There we go.
We had a great regional public safety session with Les last week, and I certainly appreciate the dialogue that was held from that. So looking forward to hearing from you today. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Does everybody hear me now? I think we're all good now. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to speak a little bit, give a little bit of information on the Alert Ready system to you. As we all know, and as we all know, that even though St. John has their own sign up alerting system, unfortunately, not everybody has signed up. So I actually have seen that we're going to end up probably using the provincial alert ready more in the future until there is a bridge developed, which may come from the provincial side, is looking at web EOC out to every municipality and that, and then we'll be able to get that alerting. But until that time, I see Alert Ready being used quite often. And I just wanted to walk through more basically some of the process of how you guys as a municipality do that. So I don't know who's controlling the slideshow of that, but if we can get that on the screen, that would be great. I don't know, or do I share my screen and do it that way? I'm not too sure what you guys want me to do here.
Les, if you could share your screen, if you could bring the PowerPoint up, bring it up in the PowerPoint program, and then basically
Okay.
you got her. Yeah.
All right.
And then,
Good. Oh, sorry about that.
We can see you. Okay.
Mr. Weber, you're welcome to.
You're breaking up there, Councillor Hickey. I didn't quite catch you. Hello?
We're okay now, Les. I believe Councilor Hickey might be in transit, so there might be some
Okay.
challenges.
All right. So here's.
I am back now. I'm just
Okay.
using my phone Wi-Fi, so I'll turn it over to you, Les.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. So the Alert Ready system is the National Alert Aggregation Dissemination System that is used across Canada for alerting and has the powers to come over the TV and all that. And we'll talk about that as we move along here. So the agenda points that we'll be talking about in this is what is that NAD alerting? Who is responsible for it? How do we use the NAD? And then we'll talk a little bit about broadcast intrusive versus non-intrusive, alert information, a little bit about the next generation NAD, and then how the municipalities request this from your level, right? So the first is, what is NAD, right? It is the public alert system used across Canada, better known as Alert Ready, and that it's we exercise a couple times a year. That there's actually a training message that comes out. One was done in November, and that I believe we'll talk about that. Pelmorax is the company that handles it, and we've had it since 2018. Basically across Canada as well, and the alert issue is used in the event when it's a potential life-threatening. I get it to go forward. There we go. Who is responsible for it? So the alert, public alert ready is issued by the federal and provincial governments and territory authorities. Within New Brunswick, we have 3 agencies that can do that. That's NBEMO itself through the director of NBEMO, the RCMP division out of Fredericton, as well as Environment and Climate Change Canada can authorize and have sent alert messages throughout.
Les, you went on mute there.
How long ago did I go on mute? I hope it was just now, right? Okay, so how do we use this within it? I know NBEMO maintains a duty officer on 24/7, and basically, if I get wind of it, then I push it up through that operations officer to the director of NBEMO to sign off on it. Some of the alert ready that we've used throughout different types, carbon monoxide for the ice storms in New Brunswick in 2017. We use it at the dam breach in Nova Scotia just more recently this year when the water got high in the Kingston area. The active shooter in Portapique in 2020, tornadoes in Ontario, and Amber Alert has been used through the province of New Brunswick in 2023. And again, we mentioned that they are potentially life.
You've gone mute again, Les.
You're
Yeah,
on mute again, Les. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I think every time I hit my slide or that it's going on mute. Anyways, so how do we use it here? Like I said, it was already tested twice, May and November, right? Now, the big thing about the Alert Ready, and this is the one I mention all the time, is the Alert Ready within New Brunswick is because we are a bilingual province, is limited to 595 characters. That includes the spaces as well, and that's to include it into both bilingual service, English and French, and that. So care and details are taken to make sure that we can come within that 595 characters and not exceed it. There isn't an appetite at this time to go higher than 595. But with the all of Canada is working with Palmorax to see if that's potentially something that can be done. The RCMP sometimes what they'll do is you'll see on an Amber Alert they will do a English and then a French, because there's so much detail in that. But most of our alerting will be done within that 595, right? NBEMO, we hold a whole bunch of pre-formatted text messages templates that can help speed up the creation of this, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So the handout that I provided with this has all these categories in there, as well as the exact descriptions, and I don't mean to sit here and go through every one of them there, but as you can see, the main categories that are under there is fire, natural, biological, hazardous, environment, terrorist, civil, and then the admin is just the test messaging that you do, and then the breakdown on them, and the further definition can be found in that handout that I provided, right? So broadcast and cruiser, yes. Was there a question? I heard, okay. I'll carry on. If there was a question, please pipe in. So there's one thing we do have to understand is the difference between broadcast intrusive and non-intrusive. So when it is intrusive, there is a threat to human life, right? The threat is immediate, an hour or within the next hour, and that. And sometimes you'll see that for hurricane warnings and things like that. Not so much there. But they are advised and instructed to do it through the public to save lives as well. And this is done. This is where you will see the messaging coming up on your cell phones and on your TV and that, right? Broadcasters have that use to text speech that they can do it there. So the big thing about broadcast intrusive is it's going to hit everybody within the area. Now we can ping areas, such as an example, the Charlotte Street Fire, which I have a little bit more information on that, but we didn't need to ping the whole province on that. We can ping an area. We couldn't narrow it down to just the south of St. John, so we ended up having pinging it all through the St. John region, but it did ping out to areas of Rothesay and Grand Bay Westfield got some, just because the towers and the message itself. So that's broadcast intrusive. That's going to come across whether you want it or not. When we talk about non-intrusive, this is when it's an observed threat is possible, but not actual or immediate. So we have a little bit more time to prepare, and it's not so life-threatening. The one thing about the non-intrusive is it's up to the carriers such as TV and radio at the discretion of whether or not they'll put it out. Cell phones will still receive it, but you won't get it on TV or radio. And third-party apps will help to pick up some of the alerts. And we're not a province that has a third-party app. But that is something looking down the road, and maybe that web EOC will become that third-party app that everybody can use, right? So the alert information that's required from the municipalities, and this is just a quick one before we go into a little bit more of the flow chart, right? The headline, we'll assign it whatever it is, as a, for instance, for the Charlotte Street Fire, we called it the Charlotte Street Fire, right? So we'll assign that. You don't have to worry about that. And then the event description, whatever, and you know what, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on this, but I was working with Lisa in the PIO for municipality when this came out, when we did this one. So basically I asked her what she wanted, and she said whatever we were alerting on your alerting system, we just transposed it into our system, right? The instructions, what you wanted to do, again, St. John had that all in there, and define the area's closest proximity that you can, and the time of expiry is not a big one, and it's whether or not, let's say you do an alert ready, do you have to cancel the alert ready? You don't necessarily have to broadcast another message that hits every TV that says, okay, it's all now safe to go back, but that's up to you, and you guys get to judge that part of it, and that. So as an example, this is the one that we use from the Charlotte Street Fire, and this is exactly how it came out, and written down. The event description there, the instructions were given, and all that. Now you notice from the second reporting that was done is the only thing that we added in there was in St. John, because we were getting bleed into other areas, and although I do not think it affected anything from anybody understanding Charlotte Street and Harding Street, but we just wanted to narrow it down just in case of any bleed, right? And for some reason, there was a couple cell phones, and now I don't know whether they were locally provided and bought in St. John that received the messaging in Fredericton. And so we're still working out that lines, and that's why that line was put in there. So, and basically in this case, the third report that we sent through Alert Ready on the broadcast intrusive was the air quality was lifted in the area, and that was sent out on October 3rd at 23:30 hours. Right. So that's just an example, one that you guys have already used, which is good. So just a little talk about the near future, and this is coming in very, very soon. Earthquake reporting from NR Canada will be, Natural Resources Canada we will be seeing them posting anything about earthquake alerts. And although I don't want to be the doom and gloom guy, but we do get earthquakes in the area. We had one a couple years ago at about 3.2 up in the Grand Bay Westville area that was felt. Not much. There was no damage to critical infrastructure, but there was still a lot of checks to make sure the rail lines were still good, and things that had to do carry on before that. That will roll out in April 2024, which is good to see. Next generation that they're looking at is possibly broadcasting over streaming sites, Google Home, your Alexis, iPads, and gaming systems, right? So they are looking at whether or not they can break into those, and that way just increase our awareness and getting our alert out. So how does the municipality do it? So basically, and I'll just walk you through this a little bit. So the event starts, your EOC or your St. John EMO or fire or whoever the one, looks at, the presentation that was already given and the handout and that, and does it meet the criteria under those big headings. If it does, then you contact me. And contact me and let me know, what, we're looking at using Alert Ready, or we want to use Alert Ready. And the sooner I know, I can spool up the NBEMO up in Fredericton to be ready to do it. Right. And then, I do a formality. I send a request to the director of NBEMO for the approval. Right. And, basically, he's not going to deny You know, if the municipality is asking for it and it meets the criteria, he's going to say yes, right? But if it is something that could be done by municipal messaging, that's fine, you know. But if it's a critical life safety and all that, then it meets the criteria and it's going to go through. He's going to grant the authority right away, or the approval right away, and then we'll draft the message based on that information that in this case it was your PIO Lisa who we sent it back to her to make sure, we want to make sure that the message that we're sending is what you want as the municipality. So once we drafted it, it went back to her. She said yeah, it was good to go. And then the message, and when she gave the thumbs up that it was good to go, it came back to me and it was sent out, right? 595 characters. Now, the one thing I do say, and what we're kind of told is it will take us. It could take us, if it's during a work day, 45 minutes. We can have the alert ready out. And then we were allowing ourselves an hour and a half to on a weekend, just because we couldn't reach people and things like that. But on the Charlotte Street fire where we used it, we actually had the message out within 45 minutes on a Sunday night, close to 10 o'clock at night type thing, or 9 to 10 o'clock at night. So we can get the message out pretty quick. The one thing I do caution, because the one that you'll see under the list in there, under I believe it's under environmental, is the boil water or orders, and we all know that St. John is subject to a lot of boil water alerting and that. So the only thing we have to, and we would probably caution on, was whether or not NBEMO would actually send that one, because of what's called alert fatigue, which is a real thing out there. Too many messages get out there and not enough people are listening, or they just start not listening to them anymore. So all right. So, and it's written in there, alert fatigue's just overwhelmed, and sometimes people will stop. They become desensitized to the alerting. And then, like I said, that's about the only concerns in that. And like I said, that's just a time to initiate, less than an hour or an hour and a half on the weekend. But the sooner you can bring me into the loop, the sooner I can spool them up. And it's not that we need to have that message as soon as you contact me, but I mean, I can start waking people up and shaking beds to make sure they're awake. And then when the message is ready to go out by your municipality, that we can do it, right? So at that point, I'm going to end my brief, and I'm going to close this down. And if there's any questions, please let me know if you have any. Just trying to see. For some reason, I can't unshare. Stop sharing. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. We're a little technical difficulties, but we got her back. So, are there any questions on the process or anything that you might want to talk about? I seen. Oh,
I'll move or receive for information just to get the motion on the floor.
I'll second.
you're on mute.
Chair Hickey, you're on mute.
I was going to say, I thought I was directing that and it wasn't working. Moved by Her Worship, seconded by Councillor Stewart on the question. Any questions for us on the question? Those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, Les. We appreciate your presentation and making the time as well today.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good day.
Thank you. Moving along, item 7.3, Housing Vision Statement. I'm going to turn it over to Kara, I believe. Welcome, Kara.
Thank you. I'm just going to bring up the presentation for us. Perfect. There we go. Okay, so Chair, committee members, I'm here today to present a Housing for All vision statement as a first step in developing a policy supporting our homeless population. As you know, the Out of the Cold shelter opened this past Friday at 8 p.m. and will run 8 till 8 through March, when it transitions to the homeless hub in April. The province of New Brunswick's goal is to reduce chronic homelessness by 50% over the next 3 to 5 years. In the spring of 2023, the city collaborated with the province of New Brunswick, community agencies, and other partners to support those living in encampments. Through this, we cleaned vacated sites that posed a safety risk at a total cost of approximately $78,000, paid according to land ownership between the city, province, DTI, and Gateway Operations. We also provide garbage pickup at some of our sites and clean vacated sites that do not pose a safety risk. Those initiatives are not covered by the $78,000 I just referenced. In 2023 summer, research and interviews began as a first step in developing a policy to support the homeless population. Representatives from Growth, General Council, and Community Services worked together to do this research nationally, as well as working with the Halifax municipality and other municipalities across the country. In fall 2023, we're here to share with you what the team has put together as a vision statement to steer the development of what this policy will look like. In addition to the departments that I've already mentioned that participated in putting together what this vision statement I'll be presenting to you, Communications, Public Works and Transportation, Parks and Recreation, and Community Standards Compliance also had an opportunity to take a peek at the vision statement and provide some feedback. As I mentioned, we were doing some research and interviews nationally, looking at different towns and municipalities. Also looking at research and the consultation with Org Code Consulting, who the province is working with closely in developing their strategy. Through these learnings and best practices, we decided that it would be best to put together a vision statement in order to have that steering guide focused on the goal of housing for all when we're around the table. So I'll give you a moment to read the vision statement, just so everybody has a chance to read through it. So when creating this vision statement, we want to make sure that it encompasses the full community. Important to note that it's a vision statement intended to keep our partners, ourselves included, focused on the goal of supporting the homeless population through an inclusive and equitable lens. So I'd like to read the vision statement to you as well, because I know for myself, when I read it to myself or when I hear it spoken out loud, it comes across a little bit differently. So if you're comfortable just shifting your gaze away from the statement while I read it to you, just so you can hear how it comes through. Every resident within the city of St. John is entitled to a safe, supported, and sustainable home. In the spirit of the right to adequate housing articulated in the 1948 United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the city of St. John wishes for its residents to live in security, peace, and dignity, regardless of the home's permanence. The city of St. John's goal is to provide safe community spaces for access by all residents, while supporting individuals as they access housing that meets their specific needs. Our next steps after having this vision statement approved to move forward, we'll be creating a policy working group. So staff, community agencies in the province, in addition to the Out of the Cold shelter hub operator Outflow and our Fresh Start as the outreach team will be around the table. Our goal is to complete the policy in support of our encampments and our homeless population by the end of the first quarter, to have council approve and to align with the closing of the Out of the Cold shelter and transitioning into the homeless hub in April. So this evening's recommendation is for the Public Safety Committee to recommend to Common Council that the City of St. John adopts the housing vision as a steering statement during the creation of policy and guidelines in collaboration with the province of New Brunswick and community agencies in support of our homeless population. So I'll just stop sharing here. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you very much, Kara. I'll welcome Councillor Sullivan as well to the meeting. As I do that, I'll turn it over to the committee for any questions. Any questions from the committee? Go ahead, Councillor Ogden.
Okay, it's not a question. It's first of all, I'm just very proud that the City of St. John is taking this initiative, and I just think it's fabulous. I know we have 2 or 3 councillors, Harris and Killen and yourself, are really working hard on this, and I just would encourage everything to move as fast as we can. And I visited the shelters a lot and a number of the homeless tent cities, and it just breaks my heart to see what's going on. I know it's not just St. John, but we have an added layer of poverty in the city that's so generational. But it just makes it really bad. But the other day I saw an article on Peterborough, Ontario, where they're building a huge tiny home community, I think even bigger than the one in Fredericton. And anything we can do, I'd say this to the CAO, to perhaps find some land that maybe we could do something like that. There are some builders of tiny homes in our community, and maybe we could act on it that way. I don't want to step on the toes of the councillors who are doing what they're doing. That's their bailiwick, and they've done a fabulous job. But when I saw the one in Peterborough, Ontario, and then I read about Finland cutting out 90% of their homeless population, I'm thinking, maybe there's some ways that we can move faster by just copying what others are doing. Thank you. And thank you, Kara.
Thanks very much, Councillor Ogden. I just say that, we need all hands on deck on this one. So you're not stepping on anyone's toes by getting involved in housing. We recognize the urgency of this crisis. Despite it being a provincial responsibility, the city is feeling the impact of the homelessness crisis in this community. And I guess on that, Kara, can you outline, if there's no other questions from committee, I'll ask a quick one myself. Can you outline a bit about what the aim of the city's role being in all of this, and what that looks like moving forward?
Certainly. With the development of the policy itself, as I mentioned, the community agencies, province and city will be around the table to talk about what the homeless hub will look like. So we know that the intention of the homeless hub is to have wraparound services for all that population to access in moving forward and finding adequate housing. What will be included in the homeless hub is what will be in discussions around. So the city will be at that table to talk about what our community needs from our perspective, and then we'll have the other perspectives too. In addition to that, as we're working closely together, exploring other avenues and considerations where the city can support the population and the agencies and province in that work.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I think it's an important distinction. I wouldn't say we take a back seat to this, but we are not the lead on this file, and it's important that we continue to advocate for action around this. And I'm glad to see us take this step, and also make sure that we are consistently reminding folks of the need for urgency on this file as well. Last week, there's 218 people sleeping on our streets. It's nearing the middle of December. That's no longer acceptable. So thanks very much, Kara. Any other questions from the committee? If not, I'll ask for a motion to receive and file the presentation. Thank you very much, Councillor Sullivan. Seconded by Councillor Stewart on the question. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Motion's carried. On to item 7.4. Thanks very much, Kara. On to item 7.4, traffic calming initiatives. I'm going to turn it over to Director Tim O'Reilly. Welcome, Tim.
Great, thanks, Chairperson Hickey, and welcome to members of committee. I'm just going to share my screen here and get myself set up. And I'm assuming you can see this okay. If you can't, you'll let me know. So what I'm going to talk about this evening is our continued effort collectively, both staff, this committee and council, about reacting even more quickly to a growing concern in our community around speeds on our streets. And the efforts that we're putting into to, again, address those more quickly than we have been before. So this is a bit of background. Certainly since we've been recording the number of traffic calming requests in the city and concerns about speeding, and we've been tracking this since about 2009, 2010, the number of requests we get every year are significantly greater than our ability to address those, ranging about 20 or so per year of requests, and we can deal with about 2 to 3 of them per year. So again, much reduced in terms of our capacity. In the last couple of years in particular, the amount of requests that we've received have significantly grown, again, going from a 20-year up to about 120 or even a little bit less than this past year in 2022. So significant growth. Just in terms of the totals in our system right now, we have about 300 outstanding requests for traffic calming. So again, the requests are certainly significant. We do agree with the community members that are calling us with a concern about speeding. Slower speeds do absolutely matter. It's logical in terms of the approach here, but certainly the risk of collisions and severity of injuries from collisions do reduce with the reduction in speed. In terms of specific statistics, it takes a lot less distance to stop a vehicle at slower speeds. 12 meters simply from going from 60 meters down to 60 kilometers an hour down to 50 kilometers an hour. Accidents, particularly with pedestrians, decrease significantly with reduction in speed. For every 5%, every 1.6 kilometer reduction in speed, the crashes decrease by 5%. And again, significant higher risk of actually dying from a collision as a pedestrian at higher speed. So again, our collective goal of getting the community to drive at or below the speed limit is certainly justified. Before I talk more specifically about what we're going to do going forward, I just want to broaden it out that dealing with any type of safety concern on our streets is a shared approach to dealing with it. So of course, on the engineering side, the bottom right-hand corner, that's obviously where we come in terms of engineering our roads. But certainly the public themselves, in terms of understanding and being educated on the rules of the road and following the rules of the road that are in place, are obviously important. And again, our police force comes into play in terms of enforcement, where there are some times, obviously, where different road users need an extra encouragement to follow those rules of the road. So it's really all three of those combined. Whether it's reduction of speed or any type of road safety improvement, it takes all three of those pillars to see results. So going back to traffic calming. So again, traffic calming is the general name we use for physical changes to a street to cause vehicles to slow down. There are really several different types of traffic calming. Horizontal deflections like roundabouts or chicanes and those types of things. Road narrowing, actually reducing the lane widths or the actual road itself available to motorists. That can create a narrowing effect and slow people down. Different types of surface treatments and road markings is another major category. And another major category, which we're going to focus on this evening, is vertical deflections. That's, again, vehicles actually going up and down and again, requiring motorists to slow down. So the traffic calming is accomplished in multiple different times during the street's life cycle. Certainly the initial construction of a street, especially in the subdivisions, we can look at different ways, such as narrowing a street width in order to promote those lower speeds. When a street's up for reconstruction, we talked a couple weeks ago about Charlotte Street at Council, where we can have that opportunity to introduce traffic calming solutions. But of course, the street's only reconstructed every 20 or 30 years, so we can't wait to reconstruct the street in order to deal with all the speed concerns in our community. So the third major way to accomplish that traffic calming is through retrofit solutions of existing streets. And again, that's certainly going to be the focus of this discussion this evening. So in terms of the vertical deflection style of traffic calming, so there's kind of 3 or 4 different major categories. So speed bumps are typically found in parking lots. They're more of the abrupt vertical deflection where motorists have to maintain a much lower speed, 10 to 20 kilometers per hour. Different type of vertical deflection is something called a speed hump. This is actually a picture of speed humps we installed on Heatherway out in East St. John, where it's a vertical deflection across the entire width of the roadway. And then the third type is, which is going to be the focus for this evening, is a topic of speed cushions. So speed cushions are very similar to speed humps, except they do have gaps within them in order to lower the impact to certain vehicles, such as emergency vehicles and fire trucks that you see up here on the screen. We are making action with respect to MOVE-SJ, our new transportation plan. So there was a specific recommendation to include speed cushions within our traffic calming policy. And I'm proud to say both this committee and council adopted that recommendation in 2022, and now speed cushions are part of our traffic calming policy for the city. Benefits of speed cushions, they're proven to work, point blank. So the general speed reductions is in the range of 8 kilometers per hour. That's found in other jurisdictions that use them. Again, we have a reduced impact on emergency vehicles, transit, and cyclists because of those gaps between the actual cushions. And they're very versatile to gain different operating speeds depending on what the speed limit of the street is. So if you want to gain a 50 kilometer an hour speed limit and get people to drive at that speed, you'll space about 150 meters apart. But on some neighborhood streets, if you want even a slower speed, around 40 kilometers an hour, you just put them closer together and you can achieve that lower speed. So very versatile depending on the circumstance. The main drawback for speed cushions is again the issue of vehicles besides those targeted vehicles being able to drive between them. So a very larger non-commercial vehicles like large passenger trucks. Those that have a larger wheelbase can drive between the speed humps or at least reduce their ability to slow down. But at the end of the day, no matter what traffic calming solution we do implement, there are drawbacks to every type of solution. And so this is certainly the drawback of speed cushions. And it's something we heard recently with respect to the trial, which I'm about to talk to. So in terms of a traffic calming pilot project, again, we wanted to expedite our ability to deal with these traffic calming requests. So again, deal with them faster while minimizing how much additional resources they need to be put in place in order to address them. Again, we respect the fact that the public money is limited, and we didn't want to cause any undue impact to the city's bottom line by implementing what we're going to implement. So again, the main focus of the traffic calming pilot project was the use of speed cushions. We do have to make sure that streets that have speed cushions implemented do have excessive speeding documented. So not every concern we get from the public is an actual issue of excessive speeding. So we do have to make sure that public investment of dollars in these speed cushions is put in places where there's an actual speed problem. Part of the pilot project was again to deviate from the policy in terms of the priority weighting system that's in place, just to make sure that we are more nimble to be able to put these in places that warrant them, but again, just get them in quicker. In the case of the pilot project, to put them in places where it's a lower volume streets to reduce impact. So we wanted to make sure as part of this pilot project that we had some very good before and after analysis. So to be sure that we measure the speeds before and after the trial to make sure we get a good indication of how much it reduced speeds of vehicles, and wanted to get some very informed, clear input from the emergency services and transit after the installation. We just wanted to make sure overall that this solution, even though it works in other jurisdictions, wanted to make sure it did work in St. John, and it was a good solution for us. And if the pilot project was successful, we were going to implement this as an annual program after this 2023 pilot. So the 2023 pilot project was completed on McNamara Drive out in East St. John, which is in Lakewood Heights. It ticked all the boxes, low volume neighborhood street. There was a documented and community concern with respect to speeding within the area. And it did, the operating speeds that we measured did indicate that there was a warrant for traffic calming according to our policy. So you can install speed cushions in different numbers depending on the width of the street. So in terms of the width of McNamara, it warranted 3 speed cushions across the width. Again, with the spacing in between them for those different types of vehicles. And we actually installed 3 sets of 3 speed cushions along McNamara Drive, spaced again at that 120 meter spacing in order to promote those lower 40 km/h speed limits. So you see in the picture here, it's a little hard to see the other 2 sets, but again, we did install 3 sets along one block of McNamara Drive. Again, we wanted to make sure we had a very good, systematic and scientific way to determine how well these actually worked at lowering speeds. So we did a before and after speed and volume study before and after the speed cushions were installed. We used the same type of equipment before and after, again, to make sure that wasn't a variable in terms of the analysis. Generally the same location where we measured the speeds and volumes. And in fact, in the case of the after measurement, we put them pretty much in between 2 sets of the speed cushions. That would be real conservative because it'd be the point at which vehicles would be speeding up after hitting the first set of speed cushions. But again, before they start to slow down for the next set. And of course, besides that, we wanted to make sure we had some clear feedback from the different services. So we got in contact with the fire department, police force, Ambulance Brunswick, and St. John Transit, and asked them pretty much the similar questions in terms of their ability to maintain the speed they need to maintain for the service, whether there was any impact on the vehicles or equipment as a result of transferring over the speed cushions. In the case of Ambulance Brunswick and Transit, we wanted to find out if there's any impact to passengers or riders that would be riding on those different pieces of equipment. Very proud to say the success of this pilot in terms of speed reduction was significant, positively significant. So again, the before speeds were 48 km/h for the average. The after speeds, average speeds were 39 km/h. So a full 9 km/h reduction in speed before and after, before versus after the speed cushions were installed. So what does that introduce in terms of that much speed reduction? So again, using those earlier statistics, it's about 25% reduction in the risk of collisions. And again, much less distance a vehicle would have to stop at 39 km/h versus 48. So significant positive results in terms of speed reduction. Again, we also get feedback from all the emergency services and transit. We were actually able to meet both teams from our fire department and Ambulance New Brunswick out at the site while they're doing their tests. Again, one test was just to make sure they can fit adequately between the speed cushions. And again, these pictures clearly show this. What I'm going to show here is actually a video of it's a 20-second video, not very long, of the fire truck actually transversing 2 sets of these speed cushions. So it'll be a little hard to see, but you'll first see the fire truck going, actually hitting the tops of the set of speed cushions, and you'll actually see the truck, even at slow speeds, actually having quite a bit high undulation. And then the second set that's very much at the very bottom right-hand corner of the screen, they actually drove right between the speed cushions. And again, you can see that they can drive through it. So I'm just going to play this right now. Hopefully it works. So again, you see up the hill there, the truck hitting the first set here. And again, going at very slow speeds, but still had to transverse very difficult over the top of those speed cushions. And then as you see it as it approaches the next set, they're actually travel between the speed cushions as they would do in a normal emergency situation. So again, with very great success being able to drive between those speed cushions. So in terms of the feedback from all the emergency services and transit, again, very good results in terms of their ability to maintain the speed, minimal impact on the equipment, and in the case of ambulance Brunswick and transit, no concerns with respect to impacts on passengers. Another side benefit of those speed cushions is actually a documented reduction in volumes as well. So again, the before and after volumes were basically cut in half on McNamara Drive. Now again, in the case of this particular neighborhood, there's really no net benefit to the neighborhood, because basically what happened is some motorists were probably avoiding McNamara Drive and using other streets around it, like Summit or Bonaccord, and going around the speed cushion. So in this case, no net benefit to the neighborhood overall, but again, clearly there's evidence here that speed cushions can result in a diversion of traffic. So in other cases around the city, which we'll talk to in a second, it could actually reduce the cut-through traffic through a residential street and put vehicles that are driving through an area where it belongs on collectors and arterial streets. So again, overall, very successful trial. Speeds reduced, and no impacts on the services we don't want to have impacted. And again, some side benefits of the volume reduction. So you'll see in a couple of slides, our recommendation is to move from a pilot to an annual program starting in 2024. Just a question for the committee that opposed to is in our strategic plan, there's one of them that actually talks about introducing 20 major traffic calming projects in 10 years. So a question I have for committee is, we really didn't define what major means, but should a very successful trial like McNamara in these cases be considered a major traffic calming project, given the results? So initial plans for 2024 next year. So we're going to select 5 locations instead of 1 to install these speed cushions. We're going to finish the job on Cedarwood Drive. We initially planned to do that in 2023. We're going to move to Douglas Avenue, which I think is going to be very positive for us. Again, certainly higher volume street. As you may recall, this was one street that we did recommend the lower 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit. Speed limit signs are up, but the average speeds are still hovering around 47 kilometers an hour on Douglas Avenue. So that there is evidence in the need to reduce those speeds down close to the speed limit. Significant concern on Douglas Avenue with respect to pedestrian safety and general speeding. Of course, we have the high school and the future singular home of the New Brunswick Museum on that street. And again, with that potential to reduce cut-through traffic, I think is going to be very significant potentially for Douglas Avenue, because again, certainly Douglas Avenue is one of those streets that I'm sure a lot of traffic uses a cut-through traffic instead of traveling on Chelsea Drive. So this will encourage more vehicles that are aiming to go east to west to stick to Chelsea Drive and not use Douglas Avenue. And then we'll pick 3 other streets that again warrant the traffic calming solution. All this will be supported in part by what's recommended in the 2024 budget. The $75,000 we'll use part of that in order to install these speed cushions. So again, you can really see how these types of modest investments can be used to really create some positive safety improvements for St. John streets. So the recommendations as they're here, 2 of them, to actually go forward with a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit on McNamara Drive. That would require a change to our traffic bylaws. So we'd have to recommend that to Common Council through the Public Safety Committee, and then again endorse moving this pilot project over to a regular annual program starting in 2024. Again, just with that general question around the thoughts on whether a major or a significant improvement like McNamara Drive would be considered a major traffic calming project through the strategic plan. And with that, I'll turn the floor back over to you, Chair, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thanks very much, Tim. I see Councillor Ogden's hand up, so I'm going to turn it right over to him.
Thank you, Tim. This is excellent. We keep hearing from every group possible that quality of life is one of the drivers to our population growth, and that can be more recreation, a safer city, more post-secondary, more housing, all those types of things. And one thing I think what you're doing is making quality of life much better in St. John as we lower the speed limits. I'd like to see us lower them all. And And I think that really has a big impact as our cities become more pedestrian friendly, more environmentally friendly. But I think it also has an impact on the quality of life issues that when people choose a city, they want to go to a safe place. And of course, cars can be killers. And so I think what you're doing is great. And I'm wondering, there must be an economic benefit to this in the sense that if you have a road like Douglas Avenue, you suggested, and if you lower the speed limit there, you probably get a lot of requests. We probably spend resources there. That would have an economic impact in the sense that we could then transfer those resources to other areas and eventually solve the whole problem that we're not spending so much time dealing with speeders. It's just like when all the houses that have burnt down were all the fire traps, and that should free up fire department resources. And sadly to say, that's happened in some parts of our city. You kind of wonder what's left to burn down. But I think this is great, and it has both quality of life, important aspects to it, and I think economic aspects to it is that slower speed limits will make the city safer. And one place you said you were looking for other places is the lower end of Main Street, which is the end of Main Street that always gets forgotten and is not going to be dealt with when we narrow the other end of Main Street. But the lower end of Main Street has become a speedway. As you know, you just put a three-way stop in there, which is great. So I want to congratulate you on this and encourage you to do more. It has some long-term positive repercussions in terms of quality of life and economic savings. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Ogden. Turn it over to Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Tim. This makes a ton of sense to me. And correct me if I'm really wrong, but I think just lowering a speed limit from 50 to 40, and if we don't do anything else, it's a bit of a waste of time. People who speed are just going to speed. We'll just be 30 kilometers over the limit instead of 20. And law-abiding citizens will be annoyed because they're driving slower while they're getting passed by the rest of the neighborhood. The speed cushions make sense. That will slow people down. Folks who live in the area are happy with the slower speeds, and I would think likely don't mind going over the humps because they're only going a block or two to their homes, and it diverts traffic to streets where the traffic should be. I'm looking forward, to helping Douglas Avenue become more of a local street or a tourist street where you've got safer traffic speeds and putting people in Chesley Drive where they should be. So thanks for bringing this forward. I'm glad we've got the resources and the plan to start getting them implemented. Again, it's something modern cities have in order to control speed because we can't enforce it all. The police can't be everywhere. It takes more than signage. And I'm glad the engineered solutions are here. So thanks for that, Tim. It's got my full support.
Thanks, Councillor.
Then any other questions from the committee? I guess I just have a couple quick ones, Tim. Is there a plan for permanent signage on those cushions? And I'll ask both of them now. What's the impact on snow removal?
Yep, great question. So so the ones, these will include both signage on the side of the speed cushions to indicate that they're there. And they're white painted arrows that are placed on top of them as well. In fact, we're putting the ones on McNamara here very soon. So both paint markings as well as signs associated with the speed humps or speed cushions to make them more visible. In terms of snow removal, we'll see how it goes this winter for our own cushions. I do know they're used in other jurisdictions, including Halifax, where they have snow, and there's been no issues that way. Again, most motorists will drive over top the speed cushions, and they'll be cleared off normally. So not expecting any issues, but we'll observe it over this winter. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess just quickly, my second question, with a list like 300 plus on, waiting for traffic calming measures, how do we manage that? And how do we eventually see light at the end of the program to be able to get a better handle on it, to be able to prioritize that, but then also to be able to make sure that we're, taking the proactive approach to traffic calming. You know, instead of just responding to all these requests, making sure that we're, you know, taking proactive approach when we're doing street reconstructions in particular, and we're doing asphalt resurfacing, and, you know, what extra steps we can take. How do we manage that, and then how do we look for growth in that department as well to try and get a better handle on it?
Yeah. So it's a holistic approach for sure. Again, on the reconstruction side, virtually every street we look at now for reconstruction, we're looking at opportunities to narrow them down. Charlotte Street's a perfect example, but every street we're looking at it that way. So we are looking through every reconstruction through the eyes of traffic calming. In terms of our ability to act quicker, you know, we actually just invested recently in some better measuring devices to measure the speeds of vehicles to get the actual analysis done faster. So that we're working on as well. We're about to present to either council or public safety committee our first road safety education program for the city to actually help our road users understand their importance and their role in promoting road safety. So that's coming down the pipe as well. But yeah, we'll stretch the dollars we have as far as we can, and that's extra $75,000 is going to help for sure. But yeah, at the end of the day, there will be a limit to how much we can get done with that. We'll still not be able to deal with all requests that come down the pipe, but we'll continue to get them done faster. And as I mentioned before, just because it's 300 requests doesn't mean we'll put 300 sets of speed cushions in. Sometimes we get requests come in and the speeding's just not there, and that'll be picked up during the measurement, and we'll report back to the citizens there. So continue to make steps in kind of different places, and I guess the main thing is we're making progress every day and every year in the right direction, and that's what we're doing.
Great, thanks very much, Tim. And I guess I'd just say, like, if there are those opportunities for further investment, I think there's a lot of appetite around the horseshoe right now for these types of initiatives. We're seeing it in our community. We're seeing the impacts from not taking traffic calming measures, but I think more so we're seeing the bigger impacts and the bigger impacts on neighborhoods from doing it. You know, of course, I know in my neighborhood, you know, just the reconstruction of Peter Street has made such a difference. Just to the way traffic interacts with cars, interact with the street, as well as the way pedestrians feel a lot more comfortable using the street as well. So the more we can take these steps, the better. The recommendations are in the kit. I'll ask for a motion to support them. Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Stewart, because you have no choice. And on the question, all those in favor? Great, thank you. Motion's carried. Thanks very much, Tim. Moving on to item 7.5, it's our SJEMO obligations and MERP revision. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Rob Nicol.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Hickey. Good evening, members of Public Safety Committee. Just give me a moment and I'll share my screen. Is everyone able to see that now?
We are now, Rob. Thank you.
All right. Well, good evening, and I thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. I'll just be providing a brief standing committee report on the Public Safety Committee obligations. So the purpose of the standing committee report is to provide an update to the Public Safety Committee on the obligations under the Emergency Measures Act, the Emergency Measures Bylaw, and also to provide a vehicle for common council and public to make inquiries or any advisories. To meet the continuing obligations of the Public Safety Committee, the Standing Committee report for December 6, 2023 will consist of a revised copy of the Municipal Emergency Response Plan, or the MERP, and any supplementary plans, including the inclusion of Department of Public Health as recommended at the October 30th, 2023 Common Council meeting. It will include findings from recent after-action reviews for exercises or events that we've we've gone to. I'll touch on some training initiatives and then finally close giving a bit of an overview of the training initiatives and the exercises that have been completed in the 2023 to date. So moving on to the Municipal Emergency Response Plan and any supplementary plans. The MRP was updated as reported at the October 25th, 2023 Public Safety Committee meeting, and then on the subsequent Common Council meeting on October 30th, 2023. Following the review of Council and the recommendations provided, the MRP has been updated to include the reference to public health in a number of locations, including Part 1, other stakeholder agencies, and again in Part 2 as applicable in the hazard response plans. Also noted that the St. John EMO contact list has been updated to reflect contact information for public health. Aside from this, no other updates have been made to the MRP. The major ones were done at the last public safety meeting. So it was really just the addition of the contact information and the reference to public health and the regional medical officer of health. I want to move on now to the exercises, and this is not a comprehensive list by any extent of the exercises that were done this year. These would probably be the higher level ones. What I'd like to speak on briefly is the provincial CBRNE exercise. This included, and I'm going to read it so I don't forget any of them. Federal RCMP National Response Team, the Public Health Agency of Canada, Department of National Defense, the Federal Radiological Assessment Team, and local first responders, police, fire, as well as the heavy hazmat teams. So this was a large-scale event, and certainly something that needed to be done. There has been a bit of a gap in the CBRNE exercises, and so this was kind of bringing it back from the COVID pause. And again, for those who may not be aware, CBRNE is your chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive incidents. So it's a great opportunity to get all the different agencies, and again, federal, provincial, and municipal agencies working together to kind of assess any gaps and I guess to practice the skills in responding to any of these incidents. Some of the other ones I'll just touch on was an exercise at the DP World. This was actually removal of a patient from the crane. So this was a beneficial piece in, I guess, giving the first responders confidence and being able to extricate somebody from the large cranes, and as well people working at DP World understanding that if things do go wrong, that they have an option to get people out of a bad situation. We spent some time with St. John Airport, working with their firefighters and their command staff. This year was a tabletop where we were able to exercise incident command. There's also a full-scale exercise at the East St. John Terminal at the east end of the causeway. And again, this was multiple agencies working together, understanding what each person's role was and to kind of understand the scope of what goes on at that location, both marine and rail offloading and the piping that goes to the refinery. So beneficial for everybody involved, and or certainly some takeaways from that one, which I'll touch on later in the presentation. The other two I'll touch on was a rail exercise in Moncton, and this involved all the heavy hazmat teams in the province of New Brunswick. A good opportunity to practice together that regional approach. And again, if there is a large incident, it won't be just one team. Oftentimes it's several teams working together, so that interoperability and working together is certainly beneficial, and the networking piece here was huge. And finally is our annual PLNGS exercise. Again, this is multiple agencies, Musquash Fire Department, St. John Fire, and the staff at PLNGS, where we exercise different mock emergencies that could occur at that site. And again, it's a good refresher and a good opportunity to test our communications as well as our standing operator procedures and our command structure. So just a note, a lot of the exercises are finished for this year, and we're really just starting now into planning for next year. So the next report will have a little bit more information on what our 2024 exercises will be. The next piece I wanted to touch on were the after-action reviews. And just kind of as a reminder, we do after-action reviews after any significant incident or any significant exercise. So there were certainly ones done at the AIM incident, and we'll have a presentation on that shortly in this meeting of the Public Safety Committee. Also, we're done with the CBRNE, and I guess speaking specifically to fire, is any of our significant incidents where we have a prolonged response to a site or a significant event, we have our after-action reviews there as well. And I think they're beneficial in that they identify what's done properly, what's done well, and where there's areas for improvement. But I just wanted to touch, not specifically, I guess, with all of the different after-action reviews and the specifics to each exercise or incident, but more in the themes that came through those. And the first one would really be the relationships and the importance of establishing relationships with all the different agencies and all the different responders. So that's something that we know we need to continue to work on, and we've actually been making good strides in that one. And I believe the AIM incident actually shows the importance of those relationships and having those relationships prior to an emergency event. Some other common themes were communications and interoperability. Again, those are always kind of underlying challenges that we have. We're limited to radios and certain channels, different radios from different agencies. So it's a bit of a workout with the NBTMR system, and a lot of people now moving to that one. The interoperability and the communications are certainly improving, and we're continuing to make strides in that one. Increased frequency of training. I don't think we can train enough. Oftentimes there's other commitments and priorities, but training certainly is important, and people are recognizing the importance of training as often as possible, and to make them valuable and to really coordinate with the agencies that are going to be involved, so that it's not a waste of time, but that it meets the objectives of their agency of what they need to practice or to work on. And I think the last one I wanted to touch on as a theme was the accountability of at scenes, and that's an important one. It's very easy. Sometimes scenes are small and are easy to contain. Other ones are much larger. And you look at the AIM incident, a very large space, and accountability for all the crews, all the people moving in and out of the site is certainly very important. And I guess that theme carries through on a lot of the incidents. As part of the update, I thought it was important to note the engagement in regional committees and meetings with EMO and fire representatives. And the slide just shows some of the engagements that we've had at that level. Again, the development of relationships and networking in the emergency management field is crucial for incident success. The expanded role of the Fundy Regional Service Commission to include regional public safety has really been instrumental in engaging public safety officials in the area to work towards greater collaboration. And we're seeing a lot of talk and a lot of momentum behind that regional collaboration between a lot of the different services, especially in the EMO piece. And so we look forward to seeing where the discussion and where the action items from the Fundy Regional Service Commission take us. And I can speak to fire a little bit as well, that there have been several training sessions where there's been mutual aid discussions working on what does that look like for all our different departments around the Greater St. John area. And also a weekend where there was some common ICS command structure training between some of the volunteer departments and the career ones, which are beneficial and certainly help as we look at that regional collaboration. Moving on to the training. As you can see, this is again not a comprehensive list, but these are some of the sites that people have gone to. And really, this is not just fire department, but this is public safety representatives that attended these sites and have had an opportunity to practice their skills and to actually acquire new skills in emergency response and command. So you can see there's been interaction with the Coast Guard and response to Partridge Island, understanding the operations at Coulson Cove and Bayside Power. Again, the YSJ or the St. John Airport, understanding what emergencies they could have and what does each responding agency, what is their role in an emergency there. Interesting kind of new technology to us, at least in the St. John area, is the Birch Hill Wind Energy Project site tour. Very beneficial for a lot of the first responders there, understanding what you can and can't do and what type of incidents you might have at those locations. I think it's important to stress as well that the ICS training is continuing, both in fire department and with the City of St. John staff. And I have to thank Les Weber and NBMO for a lot of the courses that they've put on throughout this year, where we've had staff members work through their ICS 200, 300, and 400 levels. So with that, I'll move into the recommendations, and we have two this evening. One, it's recommended that the Public Safety Committee approve the revised St. John Municipal Emergency Response Plan to include the Public Safety Committee report dated December 6, 2023, and also that the Public Safety Committee receive and files the attached Standing Committee report on the Public Safety Committee obligations. With that, I'll end my presentation and stop sharing, and certainly I'm open to any questions.
Thanks very much.
I'll move the recommendations.
I'll turn it over to the committee. Moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Any questions from the committee? No, thanks very much, Rob. I appreciate this. This has been an incredible amount of work to get it to this point. I'm glad to see the inclusions and reference to conversations from the last committee meeting, especially with the conversation with Dr. Barker. Also, you know, I'll put a plug in again around our conversation around what public communications look like and how building expectations in a 21st century 2023 landscape of communication expectations needs to be front and center when we deal with this, and I think it is here. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'll ask with the motion on the floor. I'll ask for a vote on that. So all in favor? Thank you very much. Motion's carried. Thanks to you, Deputy Nicol. On to item 7.6, Public Safety Dashboard, Fire Stats 2023 year to date. I'm going to pass it over to Leah. Welcome, Leah. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair and committees of members of the committee. So this evening I'll be sharing an update primarily related to the stats for St. John Fire, and just a brief update on the status we've made with the Public Safety Dashboard. So we have been working with the corporate performance measures team has been working through the performance measures primarily related to the corporate priorities, and so we'll certainly be switching gears and shifting to the Public Safety Dashboard early in 2024. But did want to provide an update just on the stats that we do have available for St. John Fire specifically. And also just let you know that we have been providing an update on the website. So on stjohn.ca, on the St. John Fire page, we have been including the first 3 slides that I'll share with you this evening monthly. So just as a general update related to the particular incidents and a comparison against the last 4 years. And as we move forward with implementation of our corporate record system, the First Due system, we'll have access to additional information and be able to expand on some of the information that is provided. So the first is looking at the incidents year to date. So going from January to November, You can see that the majority of our calls this year have been related to medical calls, at just over 1,800 calls of medical service calls. And that represents about 43% of the total calls for the department. And so this graph is one that's included, again, on the website monthly, and we do update it for each month. Next is looking again at the incidents by type, but with a comparison over the last 4 years. So again, showing the difference or the increase that we've had in 2023 with certain types of calls. Medical has continued to be at the top of the list, followed with alarm activations and fire close behind. Next, just a breakdown, again, looking at the last 4 years, but looking at the monthly comparisons to see if there are any trends in the monthly activity that's happening with the particular incidents. And so again, you can see ranging from January to February over that 4-year period, the calls represented by the orange bar for 2023 have in the later part of the year really started to trend quite a bit higher than we've had over the last 4 years. And next, so this is more of an internal information that we do review. And so this is looking at the percentage of calls that each apparatus is responding to. And so you can see Engine 1, which is our engine based out of Station 1 on Carmarthen, does respond to the highest number of calls at just over 25% of the calls. This is important to look at to see also not just the number of calls, but the type of calls or the breakdown of calls. And so you'll see, for instance, Rescue 4, which is the second on the list, they have different equipment that would enable them to provide assistance at motor vehicles. So they would respond to all motor vehicle incidents, which is represented by the brown color on the graph here. And next, just a breakdown by time of day to see if there are any particular times of day that tend to be busier. And so you can see that the early morning traffic, kind of beginning at 8 or 9 in the morning, things start to pick up and do stay fairly steady into the evening around 9 or 10 before they start to drop off. And last that I'll include today is just a breakdown by day of the week, which is very consistent amongst the days of the week. So, and this is for incidents just in 2023, but looking at all incidents year to date, there is a very even distribution over the days of the week. So again, we'll certainly be looking at additional objectives and metrics that we'll be putting forward in the future, but just wanted to provide a quick update for this evening.
Thanks very much, Leah. Just stop sharing your screen if you can. Thank you very much. Turning it over to committee, Councillor Sullivan. I see your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I love having the data. Looking forward to when we can dive into it more. We're really looking at important baseline things to go forward. I just want to clarify, like on the slide, the total by type. In the first 11 months this year, there have been 726 fires in St. John.
So yes, calls that have come in as a fire-specific call. So that sometimes they respond and there isn't actually a fire. So anything that was dispatched as a fire would be grouped under that particular incident type.
Okay, so would multiple calls to the same incident be included in there, or these are 726 incidents of calls to a fire, but the fire may or may not have been there?
That's right. It's incidents.
Okay.
And so that's something that we'll certainly, that's something that we're certainly looking forward to having some additional information.
Okay.
Right now, it's very difficult to actually dive into those to say, okay, what was the value of property saved, for instance, due to responding and getting there quickly. But that type of information is what we'll certainly be able to provide once we have a fuller incident documentation piece, which currently isn't available, but we're very close to being able to roll out.
Good. Yeah. So, certainly, some questions that I think we'll be able to dive into, if those are the number of calls. I know we're talking about, charging people for false alarms, for example, when we get there, but we're not quite there yet in the data. So, great. I love the dashboard. Love that we've gotten started on this. Can't wait to dig into it some more. Thanks, Chair.
And just on, I can just speak to the false alarms. So alarm activations are a separate category that we have included on the graphs. And we've had a couple of incidents this year where we have utilized the bylaw to charge, but it has to be pretty extenuating circumstances where crews have responded multiple times in a day to the same address.
So looking forward to, as we start to parse things out, that will be something that we'll be able to see. We've got this many alarm activations, this many false alarms. Like, I'm just looking forward to breaking it all out. That will be coming down the road somewhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
Thanks very much, Councillor Sullivan. Any other questions from committee? Councillor Stewart? I guess I just say, Leah, not so much a question, an appreciation for the data. To Councillor Sullivan's point, the more we can make informed decisions and informed ideas about how our fire service operates, the better. And I would suggest looking at the growth in medical calls. I was chatting with a couple firefighters the other day, and just certainly bringing some anecdotal data to this conversation, and just saying the amount of Narcan responses that we're having to action in our communities has increased so much, and is becoming an increasing challenge for us, and just paints the picture larger around what we were talking earlier around our homelessness strategy and housing strategies moving forward. So thanks very much for this. I'll ask for a motion to receive and file on this one, if I can. Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Stewart. On the question, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Leah. Moving on to next item. Item 7.7, AIM Fire update. Turn it over to Chief Clifford.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, members of committee. I'm trusting you can see my screen okay?
We can, Chief. You're good.
Very good. So the report that we're providing today is the AIM Industrial Fire, the after action review findings. And I do have a slide at the end basically speaking to an invoice that we've submitted to American in the AIM industry with respect to an invoice. Working to advance the slide here now. There we go. So the after action review was completed in two parts. We basically examined the period from the first call at 0138 to 0800 hours, which was an extraordinary amount of activity. And we talked to the group of men and women who would have worked that period on October 11th. And certainly talked about, how things went, what was the experience, what did you think we could have done better, and where were the successes. And on October 24th, we brought the second group of people together, and we talked about the time frame of basically 0800 on the 14th until we left that scene on September 15th at 18:30, 6:30 in the afternoon, the early evening. We didn't speak to every individual. We spoke to the company officers, so every officer would have had a crew of 3 to 4 people. As part of the after action review too, we also examined in detail, we listened to the PSCC, Public Safety Communications tape over the 40 hours. But the dialogue of that tape was actually a straight, almost 5 hours of straight dialogue, and that allowed us to kind of to put a timestamp on all the activity, and basically made sure that we had the chronology accurate. And certainly it was a lot of work from the standpoint of Scott Green and Lois Gorham at PSCC. So I certainly appreciated their support, and it just affirmed how we were tracking and how the story unfolded. So that's kind of how we set up the after action review. At the end of the day, we looked at the observations, and we got 9 observations, and I'll briefly touch on the observations, and I'll briefly touch on our follow-up. And at the end of the presentation, I will re-summarize the follow-up for the purpose of the committee being able to reflect again, and if you have any questions. So the first observation, and again, you would have heard some of this yesterday in the minister's presentation, is that the water supply was inadequate to deal with the nature of the incident. So we need to understand at any site, we need to understand what the fuel load, what the potential fire is, and whether we have an adequate water supply. So that needs to be addressed. And again, I don't know if you heard my comments today, both this morning, early morning, and midday, in that before we even contemplate AIM being given their license, there needs to be serious consideration given to the position of the city of St. John, which by that operation is misplaced. So I don't even like entertaining the thought that what we would do if they get a license again. But if they were, and again, I've stated strongly today, it's the city's desire is that operation is not there. But if we are faced with a renewal of the license, then before that could ever possibly happen, the question of how are we going to supply water to another event of this kind needs to be addressed. Again, that's part of the license. If it were to be considered. The observation number 2 was around emergency alerting. We're very grateful that Les Weber was in tonight talking about Alert Ready, and interestingly enough, the early stages of that fire, the plume was going straight up. And again, the direction for our staff on site were, if you found yourself downwind, be sure to have your self-contained breathing apparatus on. And for the early stages, nobody was really caught downwind because the plume was straight up. We actually had St. John Police Force do an assessment around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, and actually drive to the locations of our high school, St. Max and St. John High. And it was an unscientific test, simply a nose test, but give us an assessment on what you're smelling, what you're feeling, what you're seeing. And as of around 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning, we did not have any really evidence that the cloud was moving into our community other than straight up. Now, we did not realize at that time that the winds were going to change, and we were working with our communications group around doing our own emergency alert and our own shelter-in-place messaging. But the point here was basically there is an opportunity to work with the Alert Ready system. The Alert Ready has a deeper reach and actually a more targeted reach than our own emergency alerting system. And so it was just a note here to be mindful of the Alert Ready process. We actually used it at the Charlotte Street fire, which happened a few weeks later, and it presented a much different environment. But the observation again was basically be mindful of the opportunity to provide that information to your community. Observation 3 was there are pieces, and we had great interoperability, and as council remembers, we recognized a number of our stakeholders at an open session of council. But what we did find was some of those pieces where we connected, whether it was connecting our standpipes, our hoses to the Spitfire tug, there was some equipment items that didn't quite talk to each other. So we had to do a lot of MacGyvering to actually make our adapters fit each other. And so we basically looked at that and said we need to ensure that those connections are easier. And we've actually gone and done that. And so that's been done. So that's that whole agency interoperability piece. Observation number 4 was typically when we get to an environment whereby the air quality is compromised, whether there's not enough oxygen or contaminated oxygen, our direction is basically put on your self-contained breathing apparatus. And that was the direction we provided our crews. Well, the self-contained breathing apparatus can weigh up to 40, 45 pounds. And again, this was a prolonged incident whereby it was hours, a number of hours, 6 to 8 hours, 8 to 12 hours, whereby people could have been exposed. And we've talked about respiratory protection, reusable half-face pieces for a number of years in the hazmat environment. And I think over time we would have got there, but we've always been comfortable just saying, well, put on your self-contained breathing apparatus. And so that early afternoon, one of the lieutenants said, any chance of getting some respiratory protection, the reusable half-face pieces. And we did secure those items early in the afternoon. So as of now, reusable face pieces, reusable half-face piece respirators are part of our equipment cache. There was a discussion for many years, I'd say 5 years, that our leads on hazmat thought that it would be something we should look at. Again, we learned during the AIM event that having those air packs on, 40, 45-pound air packs for an extended period of time, if we don't need to, and be basically being able to replace it with the reusable face pieces is where we should go.
Chief, I don't mean to interrupt, but I don't see your slides advancing.
Thank you.
I'm following along on my kit, but I haven't seen them advance.
All right.
Excellent.
So there's the piece around respiratory protection. Okay, so the accountability, scene safety. You hear me? Everything's okay now?
Perfect. All good.
So the observation 5 is accountability, scene safety. And what would happen in that incident, we basically had 2 command levels per the ICS model. We had what we would call a site commander. And again, and the site commander basically connects with both the operation and any stakeholders, any external pieces. And I was in that role. I was in the role of basically connecting with Port St. John, basically talking to our CAO, talking to NBEMO, talking to Department of Education. So I had that piece that was basically the piece between the operations and the external agencies, Fire Marshal's Office. And so, but I also had safety. And there was a number of safety things that we would have had to put in play in the early stages. And the incident commander, basically he's responsible, through conversations with the site commander, you work out an incident action plan. And the incident commander is responsible for the coordination of all those individual units you bring to site. And so he tries to keep track of the people, he puts together an incident action plan, and basically in a fast-moving environment, you're checking the success of that plan within about 2 minutes. You're measuring it right away. And so the incident commander does that, and he also has safety. But what we need to do, and we do it at a fire structure for we actually remove safety, we take it away from the incident commander who has multitasked, and we actually make safety, we sit safety in a dedicated piece. And so what we should have had, and again, some of it is our resources, some of it is because we already deployed our EOC had already been set up in another environment. What we did talk about is that there should have been a dedicated safety officer looking at the operation, traveling around the perimeter of the operation, ensuring that that lens was there, and that safety officer shouldn't have had any other role. And again, it ended up being a resource issue, but that safety officer shouldn't have had any other role other than safety, other than watching the operation, other than checking and see that people and equipment, are they moving together in the same area, and that certainly was happening. And we should have also had a safety officer that checked for the accountability people in and out of the whole area, because there's people coming from our larger community coming into the site, and there's people leaving the site and going out, and we should have had some level of accountability of the whole area as well. And again, so we just, it's a lesson learned. It's some of it at that particular time was resource driven, was a limit on resources, but we need to make sure that we do the best we can on putting people in those critical roles. Observation 6 involved regional medical officer health in our discussion. Up until that point, I can honestly say that I've always thought that our communication with Department of Environment, Local Government, and Atlantic Health Sciences was one and the same with the medical officer of health. You know, we basically had an understanding, thought that once we conveyed to the province, once we conveyed to the Atlantic Health Sciences, that information would flow naturally to the medical officer of health. It does most of the time, but sometimes it might not. So the regional medical officer of health has asked us to directly connect on anything of this kind, reach directly to her. And we've actually revised the MERP, which you had received the presentation tonight that spoke to that adjustment. So we also, an observation around air quality reporting. There needs to be, and again, if the license to renew was to be considered, we believe there needs to be a much better report mechanism around monitoring. We need to have, again, there was three monitors that were taking readings at the time. We didn't have access to them in the working environment, and certainly not able to kind of Google the live website or whatever to try to get that data, and it wasn't brought to us. We need to have a monitoring plan. We need to have a monitoring strategy, and we need to understand what is in any type of plume. And once we understand what's in a plume, then being able to properly advise our citizens of what they need to do to be safe, whether it's protect in place, whether we evacuate. But we need to understand, and we worked hard during the AIM incident to try to understand what our community was being exposed to. So if there's consideration of reissuing the license to operate, we need to have a serious conversation around how do we do that if an event happens in the future, and what plan do we have with respect to properly monitoring, properly having the data, and working with what that data tells us. What type of contaminants are you dealing with, and working with what that data could ever imagine would be presented to our community. Again, our druthers, our preference is that the license to operate is not renewed. Observation 8 was frequency of communication with the community, and there's an opportunity for improvement here. And I think any incident needs the frequency that we would need to communicate to our community and provide community advice is really going to be a byproduct of the type of incident we have. If it's a quickly evolving incident and there's a dynamic change that could happen, then we need to be looking at communication times that are perhaps 3 to 5 hours, 2 to 4 hours. We need to set a pace for that type of incident. If we have a long, drawn-out incident, and maybe like a flood, or indeed this incident here, at a certain point, it became steady state. And we need to make sure that we set a path, we set a direction, and we speak to that in the report. We set a direction of here's when you can expect to hear from us, and we're prepared. We're prepared to provide an update. And sometimes we're reliant on another body to give us that information, whether it's medical officer of health giving us information with respect to air quality, with Department of Environment giving us information with respect to air quality. But we need to basically make sure our community knows that they're going to get some information. And it's okay to say that there's no change. We did go through a period during the AIM event where there was an order to stay in place that went from about early afternoon on the 14th, about 1300 hours, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and it went all the way to the next day to early morning, 7 or 8 o'clock. We could have had some advice. We wouldn't have changed the direction, but we could have provided an update that says there's no direction, no change in the recommendation. And so we could set, and I've talked to communications and I've talked to CAO, we can set an expectation around when we would communicate. And we could set a schedule based on the time of incident we would have. I think that serves our community better. So here's the one that we heard the minister speak to yesterday. there are large industrial fires that could happen in our community that are beyond our capacity. Whether it's water supply or the type of equipment we have. I think, you know, again, we have to understand that anytime we look to entertain or receive, accept, builds, hazards in our community, there are things that you could never imagine that the municipality would have the resources. Nor should it be necessarily the taxpayer's burden to be able to provide the type of response that's needed on some types of hazard sites. The trick here is knowing when you hit that line. And again, we were early in the AIM event where we knew that the water supply was going to be a challenge and that the municipal resources would not be able to meet the needs of that emergency event. And there's no shame in that, because that type of industry needed to have special attention. That shouldn't be the burden of the taxpayers. We were very quickly looking to others to provide help in mitigating that event. And I think that's our part, is understanding when we hit that line. Our part is to know when those occasions happen. Our part is to have those stakeholder relationships that Deputy Nichols spoke about in his presentation. Our part is knowing that we can reach to our community, whether it's JDI through Atlantic Towing, whether it's Irving Oil, whether it's the other fire services. I spoke today that the Office of the Fire Marshal for the province of New Brunswick has the ability to mobilize all fire services. So I think it's not well enough for us to say we don't have enough resources. We need to also understand that when we hit that line, that we know where to look, we know where to reach. Because simply saying, well, we can't help, we can't do anything, it's not good enough. So there's that balance besides knowing if we have the resources, we'll mitigate as best as possible and use our resources. When we don't have it, we better know where we can look for help. We better know what our options are. It's not well enough for a community not to digest that. So community shouldn't be expected to resource some of our industrial sites totally, nor should the municipality not have a plan to deal with some of these incidents, understanding those gaps. And I've already spoke to you about the chronological order. So very quickly, the follow-ups again were water supply. That question needs to be addressed if indeed consideration is given to the license to operate. Emergency alerting, we understand that the Alert Ready program with the province of New Brunswick is here to serve us, and it's an option if indeed we need that. Interoperability, we work hard at understanding how all of our partners and how our relationships need to integrate. And on the AIM event, we found that there were some simple equipment items that needed to be able to talk together. And in the AIM event, we also come to the conclusion that, you know what, it's too much to ask our firefighters to put on SCBA equipment for 8 to 10 hours at a time, and when respiratory protection options are available elsewhere. Accountability and scene safety, we talked about that as well, both internally to the event, around the immediate area of the event, and then in and out of the event. We need to include the medical officer of health, which we have done. The medical officer of health wants to be part of that immediate impact and not rely on Department of Environment or Atlantic Health Sciences to make that lateral communication to the medical officer of health. Air quality reporting, we need to have a plan. If the AIM was to be considered to be renewed, there needs to be a better plan on communicating to our public what a future event what hazards a future event will pose to our community. That needs to be addressed. Frequency of communication, if we have it along an event that is extended, we need to create a plan around communications to our community based on the pace of the event. If it's rapid, then that communication piece needs to be more frequent than if it's long and drawn out, then maybe not as, and then communicate to our public what that communication frequency would be. And large industrial fires can be beyond the capacity of the municipalities. We need to understand that, but we need to have a conversation around that. And we also need to know, what are we going to do about that? When do we need to reach out to other resources? we can't be too proud to and not reach out. So that there's an element of planning and training to even those incidents. So very briefly, the City of St. John has submitted an invoice to AIM. The invoice includes cost of goods and services at $122,000, the non-recoverable portion of HST of $858, emergency fire and emergency management services, that's labor, and St. John Water, that's labor, HST, and the invoice that we've submitted to American Iron and Metal is $218,718. Recommendation is it is recommended that Public Safety Committee receives and files the attached standing committee report on the AIM Industrial Fire After Action Review. Certainly open for any questions.
Thanks very much, Chief. I'll get you to stop sharing your screen if you can. Turn it over to the committee for any questions. Councillor Stewart.
Excellent report, Chief. But the obvious question to me, when did we submit that invoice, and have we heard back anything? Any response from them on paying that? Or what's the likelihood that's going to happen anytime soon?
I might actually ask the CAO, because I know he through finance were the last place it was. I think it's been submitted, but I think, Brent, you might have a better answer, a more clear answer.
Yes, yeah, thank you. It was approximately 2 weeks ago, give or take, a week, but just within the past month that it's been submitted. We actually went through a pretty extensive exercise to review all the information, all the time on site, all the materials used. That was then assessed to ensure that any rates that were applied were justified. And then we actually went through an audit exercise to ensure that what we're putting forth we could fully stand behind in terms of true costs to the citizens of St. John. So at the end of the day, that is the cost. I think it's well justified and appropriate that it would be paid by AIM.
Yeah, I have no doubt that it's justified. That and then some. Just the labor put into what you just talked about, putting that invoice together may not be accounted for in there, and that's considerable. So just, Chief, great job all the way around. I know you've heard that already, but honestly, there's so many pieces to that fire and that incident. Just great job by all. Thank you. Thanks for being part of this team.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Stewart. I guess I'd just say to kind of echo what you've said, Councillor, $218,000 is not the cost that was hit to this community. It was the cost that St. John Fire incurred. The cost for this community was a lot larger. And that's as a result of closed businesses, of closed office towers, of everything that was impacted on that day. So thanks very much, Chief. I really want to commend you and your team for not only your response and of course to CEO for the EMO response as well that day, but also the thoroughness and diligence in the after action review and in this effort here today has been really, really significant. So I want to thank you for that. And I guess I'd just also say I want to commend the provincial government as well for their commitment through this process. With the task force review yesterday, there was a level of thoroughness there that I think we had hoped for. And now it's just a matter of making sure we get the actions we want to see. And as the chief said, we hope that results in continued suspension of their operating license on that site. So I want to thank the team for everything. Thank the continued effort. We're going to make sure that we continue to prioritize public safety in the community. With that, any other questions? I'll ask for a motion to accept the recommendations that are in the kit. Councillor Stewart. Moved and seconded by Councillor Sullivan. On the question, all those in favor? Motion is carried. With that, I think we are safe to adjourn our meeting tonight. I want to apologize. I was in transit earlier in the meeting, but I appreciate your patience in doing so, and have been settled since. So thank you very much. With that, I'll call for a motion to adjourn by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Question. Motion carried. Thank you very much to committee members as well to staff for their work tonight. Thank you.